I want to talk about this and kind of just put it behind me and never talk about it again. Because yes, we're going to be talking about J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series, and of course, noted transphobe. I have a lot of opinions of J.K. Rowling in particular, but I never really made an entire video dedicated to her, which is going to be that. And there are other content creators, particularly those who have way more patience to deal with J.K. Rowling's transphobic nonsense than I do. They've made videos about J.K. Rowling that go hours upon hours long. And I'm not gonna lie, I don't particularly like watching those videos, because I don't really want to spend hours upon hours with J.K. Rowling being transphobic. That's not any of those content creators' fault, by no means. J.K. Rowling needs to be called out, and J.K. Rowling continues to need to be called out, as we will talk about later in this video. But I just want you to know that the reason why I have not done a similar video series or a video essay as long as those about J.K. Rowling is because I genuinely, and I mean this, do not want to engage myself with J.K. Rowling that much, let alone at all. I kind of just wish she wasn't relevant, because ultimately she kind of makes herself routinely relevant time and time again, and my goodness, it's not needed. So okay, let's give you just a quick background, right? So J.K. Rowling, author of the Harry Potter series, became very powerful in the late 90s and 2000s. However, J.K. Rowling was dating this guy in the early 1990s by the name of George Arantes. I probably got that name wrong, don't at me, and plus, he's an abuser, and I'm not here to glorify him. Because regardless as to how you or I feel about J.K. Rowling, that man is an evil person, and he should not only be accountable to his actions, but we should be actively fighting against anybody who thinks they can get away with abuse. I think consent is a primary part of any relationship, and I think anybody who violates consent should be held accountable. And I don't think that's a controversial take. I think, unless you're a pro-rapist, which is not something that I see every day, unless you are a member of the GOP, then you're literally just that. But I don't think you're going to find anybody really meaningfully contesting that consent and accountability are some of the more fundamental things in building some kind of relationship, on top of other important qualities like communication, so on and so forth. However, J.K. Rowling, as valid as her anger is towards that previous relationship, has decided to project her hatred of that man onto transgender people. Let me just explain something to you. That man who hurt her is not a trans woman or trans man or non-binary, any part of the LGBTQ+ spectrum. Yet, since at least 2017, almost a decade at this point, J.K. Rowling has positioned herself as a primary opponent to transgender people as we speak today. This has manifested in numerous ways, one of which is that she has made friends with gender-critical neo-fascists like Posey Parker. This video is not about Posey Parker, but for those who don't know, Posey Parker did an anti-transgender tour across the continent of Australia, to which at all of her events, neo-Nazis showed up and began Sieg Heiling, until other trans people and trans allies showed up at her last stop, putting an end to her nonsense. This is one of those people that J.K. Rowling has befriended, among many others. Some of those other people are US politicians and lobbyists who are anti-abortion, along with being anti-trans. Anyway, all of this is very vague intentionally for the sake of brevity, because this is not a recap of all of the transphobic and hateful misogynist bullshit that J.K. Rowling has been involved with for almost a decade now. But this is just to kind of give you a little bit of a taste as to what I'm talking about. Because you gotta keep in mind that no matter what, when we talk about this, we are to recognize that J.K. Rowling is attempting, keyword attempting, to make herself a champion of women's rights and an opponent of patriarchy. This is the general framing of her transphobia. So, would it surprise you that she also has a vendetta against asexual people? No, I'm serious. She has a vendetta against asexual people. Let me explain what I mean. Because on April 6th, which is International Asexuality Day, J.K. Rowling decided to tweet saying, quote, "Happy International Fake Oppression Day to everyone who wants complete strangers to know they don't fancy a shag." This is the same woman who wants you to believe that she champions women's rights and is an opponent of patriarchy. So for those who don't know what asexuality is, it's pretty much little to no attraction or little to no desire to engage in sexual activity. Asexuals can develop friendships, they can develop even romantic relationships, but sexual desires is not necessarily something that is on their list of priorities. Some asexuals do engage in sex, but ultimately at the end of the day, they're not necessarily all that interested in sex. Again, not on their list of priorities. Now, for some people, sex absolutely is a priority. It's very important to some people that they engage in sexual activity. After all, that's part of being human, is having lots and lots of sex. But being asexual does not make you less human, and it doesn't make you less of a person for not wanting to have sexual relations with another person. While I myself am not necessarily asexual, I've actually grown in my 30s to kind of realize that sex is not all what it has necessarily been hyped up to be. Sex is just kind of something that you do with someone if they're cool with it. Sometimes I have sex, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'm hypersexual, and sometimes I do go years with having no sex at all. Everybody's different, and that's one thing that we all need to recognize here, is that no matter what, even just recognizing who asexual people are, asexuals are not, by any stretch of the word, monolithic. Meaning, some asexuals, like I said, do engage in some sexual activity, while others are completely turned off by the idea. It's a spectrum, so to speak. And the same can be said about aromantic people, who are also, sometimes they engage in a little bit of romance, or sometimes they just don't want to engage in romance at all, and they would rather just have a friend to play checkers with. Those people are also valid. So, for the sake of argument, let's take a look again at J.K. Rowling's sentiment about how this is fake oppression that asexual people go through on a day-to-day basis in our queer-phobic world. Let's really think about this, because J.K. Rowling has a crime novel series that she pen names herself as Robert Galbraith, named after the person who invented electroshock therapy. Which, by the way, children who are suspected of being gay go through without consent. On top of that, this crime novel series, Troubled Blood, or whatever the fuck it's called at this point, uses transphobic stereotypes to frame trans women as predatory. Meanwhile, she's here on April 6, 2025, calling what asexual people go through as fake oppression. Can you imagine if, like, a cisgender man went up to J.K. Rowling and proudly proclaimed that the abuse that she went through in the 90s was justified, and then the same cisgender man would go on to proclaim that rape culture is fake and that patriarchy is awesome? Can you imagine the response she would give? It would be a justified repulsion towards that. But here she is, saying that someone goes through fake oppression because they don't consent to sex. Do you not understand how, inherently predatory that is? That means you have to have a problem with someone saying no to a sexual advance. You realize how fucking disgusting that is? I'm going to assume in good faith that maybe J.K. Rowling hadn't put this much thought into what I am talking about here, and that kind of does summarize just exactly what kind of person J.K. Rowling is. She doesn't really put thought into fucking anything, really. because she is terminally online. Her castle is full of mold, and you know what? I'm willing to bet that she only made that post because she saw someone on her timeline post that it was International Asexuality Day. But you want to know something else? Is that not only is this just really repulsive, it's just that I think she knew that this was repulsive. Because I think she knew that she was going to get some kind of response. I'm not the first or even only critic of J.K. Rowling, especially on this particular post that she made. Many other people have responded appropriately to this repulsively disgusting tweet. But you want to know what else I'm going to say about J.K. Rowling? She's not a feminist. In fact, if anything, she has been detrimental to the feminist cause. Think about it. In the last decade, I'm specifically talking about the 2010s, throughout the era of the Gamergate and the anti-feminist and the anti-SJW, which would evolve into what is now the anti-woke movement. Seriously, think about it. What the fuck was she doing throughout this period? She wasn't really doing anything to push any of those people back. It's not that she's too important to be terminally online, she is just that, terminally online. So this stupid Scottish motherfucker should have actually been at least aware that all of this anti-feminist rhetoric and anti-feminist movement was going on in the terminally online world. She had to have been at least kind of aware as to what's going on. But no, she didn't speak out about the alt-right doing an uprising in the United States and in Europe. Seldom does she ever even talk about anti-abortion policies or anti-abortion actions coming from the conservatives of both of those countries. No, she doesn't really even seem to care about those things. Yet, when I speak to cisgender women and transgender men and feminine non-binary people, you want to know what I hear commonly throughout all of those target demographics, along with other political topics that they deeply do care about? It's abortion. Because abortion means you can save your fucking life after you've been sexually assaulted in unprotected sex. So when I see J.K. Rowling talking about asexual people in this virulently disgusting fashion, not only do I see someone who is reprehensively queerphobic, who is an anti-consent freak, but also someone who is in direct opposition through her words and through her actions to any feminist movement and to any opposition to patriarchy as it stands today. There is absolutely no reason to take J.K. Rowling seriously. As someone myself who has fallen for the anti-feminist movement throughout the 2010s, I've come around since then, in 2017 no less. And you want to know something? I've learned a lot about feminism. I've learned that feminism is a great movement that does need to be bolstered, that does need to be platformed, that does need to be the front fucking lines of any movement that claims to fight for freedom, liberty, and autonomy for all. Like, think about it. J.K. Rowling routinely goes after Olympic participants who are people of color on a regular fucking basis. Iman Khalif, for example, is a cisgender woman who was targeted by J.K. Rowling and given numerous death threats by J.K. Rowling's followers. She's not even transgender, mind you. This is someone who was born female and is still female today by her gender identity. Yet in the country where she is from, Algeria, being transgender is illegal. So saying that somebody is transgender can get them arrested or killed if they're from a fucking country where being transgender can mean that your very existence is fucking criminalized. Is that what a feminist does? Is a feminist somebody who has to judge your very worth, whether or not you look like a woman or not? Imagine, as an anarchist myself, if I judged you and your journey as an anarchist based on how big your beard was because it didn't look exactly like Peter Kropotkin's beard. You would correctly look at me like I am fucking crazy. And I wouldn't blame you, because that is a shitty and absurd standard to hold somebody by. And it is equally a shitty and absurd standard to hold someone to patriarchy beauty standards and to call yourself a feminist. Bull fucking shit. I'm gonna wrap this up by clarifying the word TERF, because some people believe that the word TERF is an acronym that stands for Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminist. And I take issue with the last part of that, the feminist part, because I want you to really think about what a movement where you exclude certain types of people truly based on looks while using patriarchal beauty standards, and then at the same time also make the claim that your movement is all about liberation, freedom, and autonomy for all genders. Is that feminism to you, where both of those things can exist in the same movement? No. What we call that is a fucking contradiction. And you want to know what J.K. Rowling truly is? She is a trans exclusionary radical fascist. She is more politically in line with the United States Supreme Court that repealed Roe versus Wade than she even is with any member of the feminist movement. Anyway, thanks for listening to me. I know this is short, and I know, once again, this is just me talking over game footage, but I am working on something, and I do want you to be excited for the end of April. Mark your calendars, April 30th. I am coming out with an extensive video essay, so just understand I am making low effort content, but at the same time, you can't necessarily fault me because I am making high effort content that is coming out just a little bit more infrequently. So just bear with me. You will see more videos like this, but I do promise more cooler and more heavily edited videos are coming very soon. Again, mark your calendars, April 30th, that's coming out.